Mira, what's going on, everybody? It's Christian Ortiz, the developer of Justice AI, and this is Decoding Bias. Recently, hundreds of you tagged me on a video on TikTok from a creator called Rescue Me Farm. And in their video, they talk about a document they found in the FBI vault from 1989 about Christian identity, which is a horrible mix of white supremacy and religious extremism. Watch the entire video. We're not just going to talk about it. We're going to dissect it with Justice AI and see how it's not only just a problem, but how it's affecting our society today. Let's get into it.
I searched in the FBI vault white supremacy, and this is the first document I clicked on, and it's from April 28th, 1989. So don't come at me. This is at the FBI vault. The following addresses information relating to the concept of Christian identity, a religious doctrine that is a major factor within the ultra-right movement in the United States today. This is 1989. Christian identity is an ideology that combines religious concepts with elements of racism. The proponents of Christian identity often quote and provide explanations for biblical passages. However, these explanations have a racist slant. The advocates of Christian identity often cite the Bible to support their anti-Black and anti-Semitic beliefs. The Jews, according to these beliefs, are the enemies of God and natural adversaries of the white race, the chosen race of God. Blacks and other non-whites are usually regarded as unequal to whites. Usually? Yeah. Christian identity concerns the rise of white Christian nations. It seeks to discover a national as well as a racial identity for white Christians by telling them who they are and where they come from. Oh, this gets rich. Many Christian identity beliefs are rooted in a 19th century British movement, British Israelism or Anglo-Israelism. This concept claims that Anglo-Saxons and others are the descendants of the biblical Israelites and that England is the true Israel. Under Christian identity, these concepts were changed to the view of the United States as the true Israel. To advocates of Christian identity, the Bible is a history of the white race. One aspect of Christian identity is its interpretation of the original origin of the white race. To the advocates of Christian identity, the Bible is a history of the white race. It is taught that Adam and Eve were the first white people from whom all other white races descended. Another Christian identity teaching is that Adam and Eve were created only after all other races and people existed on earth. These other races, the races of color such as blacks, Asians, and Latinos, were not, according to some interpretations, created directly by God. Rather, they developed through a lengthy process of evolution originating from the ashes of the earth, the residue from the earth's creation. Because the white race is God's chosen race, only whites have immortal souls, and or all others are eternally damned and cannot obtain salvation. Other interpretations created Adam and Eve and that blacks and whites were the only original people that existed. The blacks had a specific purpose on earth, that is to be servants to whites. Furthermore, it is concluded that all other races are the result of inbreeding between blacks and whites. Oh my God! You guys really need to take your religion back, because according to Christian identity, the Jews are the children of Satan and the enemy of God. What the hell? During the period before God's creation of Adam, Satan interbred with the races of color to produce. According to Christian identity, the white race arrived on earth more skilled and sophisticated than any preceding race. It was agriculture as opposed to the others, which were either nomads or hunters. Only after God's creation of white race did civilization begin. Before the creation of the white race, God's influence was missing on earth and Satan roamed free. God created Adam and Eve to be the forebearers of a race to command all others and to be the instrument through which he, God, would fight Satan on earth. Jesus. Segregation of the races, therefore, is viewed by Christian identity as one of God's divine laws. And it says that race mixing is murder in the eyes of God. Christian identity contends that race mixing is a means by which Satan seeks to destroy the white race in the battle between good and evil. Christian identity contends that the Bible is the basis upon which the United States was founded. Shut up. This theory is in keeping with the view that the Bible contains God's laws for governing nations and governments. However, these laws are only meant for God's children, that is Israel. And this document is saying Israel is really the United States. Christian identity teaches that because the U.S. Constitution was taken directly from the Articles of Confederation, which is based upon God's law through the Bible, the Constitution is a divinely inspired document. Oh my God. Christian identity contends that Jews, sometimes called alien internationalists, what the F, have increasingly gained the control in the media industry and government in the United States. And then it talks about the Zionist occupational government, or ZOG. Moreover, this is part of a Jewish conspiracy to destroy the United States as a white Christian nation. Because of this increasing influence, Jewish interests have been responsible for the passing and or supporting of laws specifically designed to subvert the Constitution and change the United States from that of which it was originally intended to be. As a result of these acts, wars, deaths, and other Jewish conspired evils have befallen white Christians in the United States. Another aspect of Christian identity is its view of the end of the world and the second coming of Christ. Christian identity, to be sure, is not unique in its beliefs of this issue. Christians of many faiths believe that the world will eventually end. The last book of the Bible, the book of Revelations, or the Revelation of St. John the Divine, describes a period of great suffering known as the tribulations, the final segment of which is Armageddon, a great battle between the forces of good and evil that will precede the second coming. Is that what we're in? Oh, thanks for letting me know. Christian identity teaches that white Christians, as the chosen race of God, have a specific role to play in these events and that they must be physically and spiritually prepared. Christian identity views the events leading up to the second coming of Christ as inevitable. It is believed that these are part of the cleansing process that is needed before Christ establishes his kingdom on earth. During this, the forces of evil, non-whites and Jews, will attempt to destroy the force of God, whites, using any means. The result will be a violent and bloody struggle, a war in effect. The view of what Armageddon will be varies in Christian identity. Some contend it will be a race war in which millions will die. Others see it as an economic or social collapse that will lead to a communist attack or takeover led by the Jews as representatives of the Antichrist. Oh my God! Many of Christian identity believe that they are among those chosen by God to fight the forces of evil during Armageddon. These people contend that they will be the last line of defense to save the white race and or Christian Americans from either the soon to occur race war or communist takeover. To prepare for these events, these individuals engage in survivalist, paramilitary, and self-defense training. They practice weapon use and they store foodstuffs, ammunition, and other necessities of survival. They often reside in remote areas on isolated and enclosed compounds. The Christian identity message is one of racial hatred behind the guise of religion. The Aryan Nations Church of Jesus Christ Christian was an example, and apparently it's in Idaho. It talks about some of their activities, including bombing, murders, robberies, and weapons violations. All of these activities have been carried out in furtherance of white supremacy, the basis of which is contained in Christian identity. Another leading proponent of Christian identity was the late William Potter Gale of Mariposa County, California. He apparently was the person who coined the term Christian identity in approximately 1962. Gale was a major figure of the tax rebellion movement. Gale and members of a group Committee of States were arrested in Arizona, California, and Nevada in October 1989 for making threats against the IRS agents. Gale and others were convicted on charges stemming from these threats in October 1987 and were sentenced to prison terms. There are, all total, relatively few Christian identity proponents in the United States. That's changed. Although exact numbers are not possible, there are probably less than 2,000 nationwide. That has changed, and possibly far fewer. Nevertheless, as the acts of terrorism committed by Christian identity followers attest, these people are fanatics about which they believe.
The content of the FBI document you reference exposes the dangerous intersection of religious extremism, white supremacy, and systemic racism embedded within certain radical ideologies in the United States, like Christian identity. This ideology serves as a justification for racial hatred and violence, using the guise of religion to propagate discriminatory beliefs against Black, Jewish, and other non-white populations. Let's decolonize and unpack this issue to understand its roots, impacts, and what makes it such a pressing problem today. Historical roots and colonial continuity. Christian identity builds upon ideas rooted in British Israelism, later evolving into Anglo-Israelism, which claims that Anglo-Saxons are the true descendants of the biblical Israelites. This Eurocentric appropriation of religious texts mirrors colonial practices of rewriting histories to assert dominance. Colonizers often sought to legitimize their violence by framing their expansion as a divine mission sanctioned by God. This framework allowed them to commit genocide and enslave populations under the notion of racial superiority. The extension of this ideology to the United States in the 19th and 20th centuries reflects the nation's ongoing struggle with white supremacy. The U.S., founded on colonial violence and the dispossession of indigenous lands, naturally absorbed such ideologies as part of its broader societal structure. Christian identity mirrors these patterns, as it rewrites the Bible as a history of white people, centering whiteness as divine and justifying segregation and racial violence as part of God's law, racial hierarchies, and the danger of supremacist movements. This belief system perpetuates a hierarchy that positions white Christians as God's chosen race, delegitimizing the humanity of non-white populations. This concept not only dehumanizes Black people, Jews, Latinos, Asians, and other people of color, but also assigns them to subservient roles. Historically, these ideologies have been used to justify violence, oppression, and segregation, not only on interpersonal levels, but through state-sanctioned policies like segregation and discriminatory housing policies, e.g., redlining. In the Christian identity ideology, the framing of a race war or divine battle between whites and non-whites shows how religious extremism can fuel far-right terrorism and survivalist movements. These ideas have resulted in paramilitary groups and white supremacist militias becoming a significant domestic threat in the United States. Why does this exist? Colonization of religion and racial capitalism. The existence of such extreme ideologies is part of the broader colonial and capitalist history that has shaped the U.S. Christian identity offers a way for white supremacists to mask racial hatred with religious legitimacy, allowing them to present their cause as part of a larger divine mission. By recasting themselves as God's chosen people, proponents sidestep the obvious implications of their racism, framing their violence as part of a spiritual struggle rather than systemic oppression. Moreover, it taps into a historical economic structure, racial capitalism, that has always relied on racial divisions to maintain control and exploitation. By dehumanizing others and segregating society, Christian identity proponents create a justification for upholding a deeply unequal system of wealth distribution and power, the problem with white supremacist ideologies. Today, the ideologies from the 1989 document persist and have reemerged in more visible forms through far-right political movements, white nationalist groups, and even mainstream media outlets. This resurgence underscores how fragile progress is, especially in a society that has failed to truly decolonize its institutions, laws, and values. The use of these ideas in the 21st century aligns with broader efforts to roll back civil rights and undermine movements for racial justice. Understanding the structural forces that keep these ideologies alive is crucial to dismantling them. Colonialism laid the foundation for modern racism, and Christian identity is but one contemporary form of a broader pattern of white supremacy that continues to perpetuate inequality. Decolonizing this issue means addressing the roots of white supremacy in the history of colonization and capitalism, recognizing the ways these forces have shaped religious and political ideologies to maintain racial hierarchies. Decolonizing this issue means addressing the roots of white supremacy in the history of ideologies. We must, 1. Challenge the whitewashing of history. By teaching a decolonized history that centers Indigenous, Black, and other marginalized voices, we can break the grip of white supremacist narratives that have dominated religious and political discourse. 2. Understand the role of structural racism. Recognize that ideologies like Christian identity feed off systemic racism, which persists in housing, employment, and policing. Acknowledging and addressing implicit biases and institutional racism is critical. 3. Support anti-racist and decolonial movements. Movements advocating for reparations, land-back initiatives for indigenous peoples, and abolitionist policies dismantling carceral systems are essential in building a truly inclusive society.
That was incredible. I'm really glad that I get to show you guys the power of this software and how it works. I want you to try it out yourself. You can visit modatlasmedia.com/justiceai and sign up for my Advocates program for $20 a month, where you get unlimited access to Justice AI and all of its features. And you get to keep up with me so I can show you what I do day in and day out and where your money is actually going to initiatives that are really changing people's lives. Family, I am humbly asking you to follow this account, hit the follow and like button. Let me know in the comments what you think about this tool, and stay in touch. I'll see you next time.